Now let's talk about Generation X and Generation Y. First of all, they're generational designations. The GI generation, exemplified by Reagan and by Mae West, born between 1901 and 1924. They would call it GI generation. The silent generation, why they call MLK and Sandra O'Connor and that generation silent, I'll never know. They didn't seem very silent to me. But they were born between 25 and 42. The boomer generation is 43 to 60, and those are exemplified by the Clintons. The Generation X, born from 61 to 81, Kobe Bryant is an example of that, and I'll give you other examples. Gen Y, Mila Kunis, born 82 to 2002. Now let's talk about the Gen X from 61 to 81. Examples of that generation are Michael Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Leonardo DiCaprio, Serena Williams. There are 40 million members of that generation, half the number of the previous generation, the boomer generation. But they were still important to us, and we're going to see why. They're still very important to us. These are your typical tort reformer generation members. The Generation Y, which are also called the Millennials, they prefer to be known as the Millennials, born between 82 and 2002. Mila Kunis, Zach Hansen, the Olsen twins, 75 million of them are now in our jury pool. Now, the next generation is probably going to be known as Generation W. I've heard Generation Z, but W is for the World Wide Web, and that seems to be what's going to come down the pike. But let's talk about what designates generations. There are generational cohorts that tie people together within their generation, and there are core values. And core values is all about decision making. So the core values of a generation is something we really need to understand, because those are cohorts that tie generational members together. But the core values are the events that occur at various critical points in the group's lifetime that create cohorts and define their core values. Events that define core values. So the sociological events that occur at economic adulthood create a lifelong attitude towards jobs, money, and savings. Money has a lot to do, their attitude about money has a lot to do with what they're willing to award in terms of a jury award, in terms of damages. So that's the sociological events at economic adulthood, so we'll look at that. These core values, the core values, are carried through life largely unchanged. You can change beliefs, you can change reasoning at the moment, but we don't change core value. We have to learn how to appeal to core value, because their decisions are made within the context of their core values. Their beliefs may change. Their core values are much less likely to change. So we really need to understand what their core values are and what the things are that have influenced the development of their core values. Generational predispositions exist. They are predisposed to do things. When these cohorts are understood by lawyers and utilized by knowledgeable attorneys, we can take advantage of that knowledge to know how to couch our submissions to a jury in a way that it will reach and resonate with their core values, keeping in mind that the core values are different between Boomers, Generation X, and Generation Y. And of course, we have a mixture of all three in our juries. So we have to create a message that appeals to all of these generations. But the main thing about this is if you learn what those are, you can make sure you don't leave one out, leave out a group. Now, caveat emptor. these are not hasty generalizations or generational anecdotes. When I first started practicing, we were given a lot of generational anecdotes. There were no forensic psychologists back when I started practicing. We were mostly told generational anecdotes by the people who preceded us in this business, and they would use very strong, hasty generalizations. They would say, for example, that German juries are very strong punishing. So be careful about taking a criminal case in front of a German jury if you can avoid it, because they're very punishing. On the other hand, if you're looking for a large exemplary damages verdict, you might want to have that same German jury. You want to hear a silly one that they taught us early, was that you don't want women on a jury if you're looking for large damages, because women make the decisions with respect to buying groceries and things of that nature, so they think in terms of pennies and dollars, whereas men make the large decisions about buying a home and spending big money. So men are predisposed to big money, while women are predisposed to spending small sums of money. I don't know where those women were, but they certainly weren't in my generation. Current data. This is not based upon, what I'm telling you today is not based upon the hasty generalizations. This is based upon generational studies by sociologists. And it's also based on a lot of demographic research. A lot of study has gone into these folks. And of course, what are they studying? They're studying them for economic reasons. They're studying these generations so that they will know what appeals to them in advertising, what appeals to them in terms of how do you get into their pocket, how do you get them to spend money, how do you get them to buy your product as opposed to a different type of product, what kind of appeal do you make to each of these generations. They understand that there's very, very, very big money. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars involved in those decisions, in understanding how do you appeal, how do you reach Generation X, how do you reach Generation Y. And most of the television that you see on commercial television today, on your standard networks, and most of the programming is very definitely keyed towards the younger generations. This is why now we have Jimmy Kimmel, and we have the younger, starting with Jimmy Kimmel, now we have the younger host of the evening shows. And we're soon going to have Stephen Colbert replacing David Letterman. You've got demographic outreach, because they're trying to figure out what these people want. So this is based upon strong demographic research. We're taking that, and it's taken by forensic psychologists who then apply this to how does this data work with respect to what we're doing with juries when you get those folks in the jury box.